Advisory Committee here at Dorset Council offices on Wednesday the 6th of March. We welcome our committee members. I'm Mark Roberts, the Chair, Rob Hughes.
Morning everybody.
Vice Chairman, Mary Penfold and Sarah Williams, and our independent members, Lee Hardy, Mark Saxby. Oh, is Mark not here? No, he hasn't got here. Philip Thickness and Richard Tinsley. And welcome all our officers who's going to be supporting us. We'll introduce our officers as and when they come to speak. First item on the agenda is apologies. Josh.
Thank you. So we've received apologies today from Councillors Bolwell and O'Leary.
Thank you. Item 2 is the minutes of the Harbours Advisory Committee to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of November 2023. Are members content that they should be approved? Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Have anyone? Yes, Richard.
Yeah, just a standing item for me. I hold a berth at Weymouth Marina.
Thank you. Mary. Thank you. And the standing ones for me, please. A berth at West Bay. I chair the Southern IFCA and represent Dorset Council on the LGA Coastal SIG and a member of the Jurassic Coast Trust. Public participation is item 4, and there are no public questions. So we move now to item 5, the Chairman's report. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Tim Day here. Tim is the new Chair of the Weymouth Harbour Consultative Group, so a very warm welcome to you. And thanks to Andy Sargent, who has looked after the consultative group. It's been in very good hands, and I know it will continue under Tim. So, very warm welcome. I just wanted to have a little word about the Harbours Committee. And in doing that, I'd like to thank Mary Penfold for her contribution, because, Mary, this will be your last Harbours Committee. Mary is not standing again at the next election. So thank you for all your contribution over the last, I think you've been on for 4 years, haven't you? Yes. And I just wanted to reflect a little bit on how the Harbour Committee has really consolidated and sort of embraced Dorset Council's ethos of bringing together the 3 harbours. We've seen quite a change from what used to be the Weymouth Harbour Committee, and it's now the Dorset Council Advisory Committee. We've seen a change in harbour masters at Weymouth. We've welcomed, of course, Ed, and there was Jamie Joyce in between, and our assistant harbour masters, Dave and Karen at Weymouth, and Ben at West Bay, and sadly losing Phil at Lyme. But they've all made a difference, and their teams have made a huge change into the way the harbours are run, but also the Harbours Committee with producing the strategy and the business plan. And I think we've really achieved what I hoped we would, which is that the committee is respected by all the harbour users. It works well with all the consultative groups, and I think we're regarded as an integral part of Dorset Council now. So thanks to everyone who's taken part and contributed to that. Ed Carter, I'm delighted to announce that Ed is now in a more senior role as Harbours Manager for Dorset Council. Ken Buchan has been our mainstay as the officer, the go-to officer for everything to do with harbours. Ken is now going to be able to be in the background. He will still be the go-to person for Ed, and we thank Ken for huge input and knowledge over the years, but he's not disappearing. I know he's going to be there, keeping a watching eye. And Mark, thank you for making it. I know it's tricky parking and stuff, so pleased you're here. We've only just begun, so it's a continuing process of the Harbours Advisory Committee. So Ed will be presenting today several of the items which in previous committees Ken would have done. So that is one of the changes. A couple of other things to mention. We've established a very good harbour watch scheme at Weymouth. That is about to happen at both Lyme and West Bay. The consultative groups have been working with volunteers for this. At Lyme, it's going to kick off on the 13th of April, and the Police and Crime Commissioner, Dave Sidwick, will be there. And a week later, at West Bay on the 20th of April, when he will also be present for the launch of the 2 harbour watches. And finally, I'd just like to thank the members who took part in the informal session very recently on the future development and the open port duty. And it was very valuable for your input. So thank you all for your time. And it is obviously an agenda item today that later on. Thank you for that. We now have the Harbour Consultative Group minutes, item 6. So we'll start with West Bay, Bridport West Bay, which was on the 29th of January. And if we have a summary, I think, online.
Yeah, hello, Mr. Chairman. I'm Gavin Brooking, the non-commercial mooring rep. I'm standing in for Simon Miles, who sends his apologies as he's unable to take it today. So he's written a report, and I'm conveying that to you all. You all hearing me okay?
Yes, that's absolutely fine. Thanks. If you'd just like to highlight a few of the items you feel are important, we've all got a copy of the report.
Yeah, so I will be very brief. I mean, Simon's written a report which I'll read out to you. So this was the first of the January meetings. It had been felt that the October meetings are great. Everything's still fresh in everyone's mind, but any action points, it was rather a long time to leave between the 2 meetings. So it's felt that a January meeting was good to follow those up. So that's why that one was put in place. One of the main concerns of a lot of the traders around West Bay is the rubbish situation. The bins currently are inadequate, and it does seem to be that we're making some progress with thinking of having some large 1100 litre bins around in addition to the current bins that are there, and with hopefully some shelters built to make them look more acceptable, and with possible advertising to help fund that. So that's a pretty positive move. It was people a bit sad that we can't do more on the recycling side of things, but I think the general position from the council and other, I don't know exactly whom, but is that people don't recycle properly even when given the opportunity in those environments. So the thinking generally is that it would all end up in landfill because of the contamination. That's a shame, but you know, that is where we are on that sort of on that subject. Just very briefly, engineering works on the southwest mound wall were due to start in October, but were delayed because the extent of the wall failure was considerably worse than expected, I believe. So that's an ongoing thing. And then that area will be now closed again for the 2024 summer season, but hopefully work will start soon after that. There were other small agenda things which aren't really worth talking about. The chairman's already referred to the Harbour Watch scheme. So that's going to be hopefully quite a decent event with the various reps all being present to hopefully meet. I'm personally the non-commercial moorings rep. It seems I've had trouble getting people to react. I'm not allowed currently to contact them, anyone directly, which is something I would very much like to do, but that's perhaps for something further down the road. One agenda item that comes up over and over at West Bay is the car parking situation. As some of you may know already, there was the massive increases in car parking charges over the last few years from one of our main car parks going from £2 to £15 a day. Clearly £2 was extraordinarily cheap, but £15 is considered to be really, really expensive. And that is causing a lot of concern for all the traders at West Bay. There is a definite decline in parking over the last summer. There's been various requests on freedom of information, using the Freedom of Information Act. Information seems to be hard to come by. I'm not entirely certain why, because I've not been personally involved. But it does seem that there is a 23% fall in parking at West Bay, according to the Bridport Business Chamber. And there is talk of it being put down to weather, but I don't think that's likely. And I think the car parking charges, everybody hears incidental information all the time about how that is putting people off, and £15 is a lot of money. It's more of a central London type price, not a West Bay price. So that's an ongoing thing. Everybody would really like council engagement on that and help, because it is felt to be not a sustainable type of parking charge. Our next meeting is in April. So that was set, and this particular meeting concluded at 8 o'clock. So 2 hours. Thank you. That is my report.
Thank you, Gavin. I would just comment that a lot of the car parks you've referred to are not actually harbour land, so it's actually not for this committee. But obviously, your concerns will be forwarded to the member for car parking.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if you wanted to comment, Councillor Ray Bryan, the portfolio holder for almost everything in the council.
If you press the right button. Yeah, I would like to comment, actually, because obviously I'm quite concerned at some of the comments that have just been passed, because this is harbour revenue that we're looking at. And I think we need to take into account that the year before, which is probably the comparison that's been drawn, we had a fantastic summer with loads of visitors and everybody using the car parks. Last year we noticed overall that the beachfront car parks, which are primarily harbour, were being used, but not to the same level. But people were going more inland and using the car parks inland. So I just want to put the record straight that if you're comparing year on year, you need to take into account the weather that changed so dramatically last year. We had a number of very wet days, and unfortunately, as an ex-boater, I know full well that when the weather's poor, you tend not to use your boat too much. So if you're not using your boat, then you're not using the car park. But the visitor numbers were also down in in the coastal areas, but very much up in the other areas of the council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan, for that clarification. And next, we'll like to move on to the Lyme Regis Consultative Group and welcome online Nick Marks to, again, give us the highlights for the last meeting. Nick. Are you muted, Nick?
That's better. Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Good morning. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. We last met on the 1st of February. The notes of the meeting are in your packs. Just a couple of points I'd like to draw out from those minutes. First of all, I'd like to welcome Ed Carter into his new role as a harbour manager, and we invite him to meet with our group fairly early in his tenure so that he can explain the scope of his new role and how it will impact on the work in Lyme Regis. A perennial problem, Chair, as you will remember, dogs on the cob. We feel, and the fishermen are very strongly of the view that dogs should not be on the cob because dog feces and dog urine in areas where fishermen are unloading their catch is deemed to be unacceptable. At our October meeting, it was discussed that there will be an environmental health walk round of the area concerned. We'll wait an update on that. I think Councillor Baldwin was leading it, and Chair, I think you said you would lend your help as well to getting that sorted. So we will welcome an update on that. Our members are concerned about the cob, the state of the cob, and the progress on phase 5. We recognise what's going on, but it's still an area of concern. This was raised at the last meeting, and the Harbour Master very kindly offered to arrange an engineer's update at our next meeting, and we would welcome that. Both Town Council and a number of the HCG reps raised the issue of the toilets near the Cobb Arms, both their condition and their opening hours. Now, I know that may not be directly part of the harbour's remit. It is adjacent to the harbour, those toilets, and are used by harbour users. So we just raise our concerns on those. We welcome the statement by Ken Buchan at the last meeting that in the new financial year there will be some work done to look at the natural forces and coastal processes which affect the beach contours and the beach condition at Lyme Regis as part of the branch management plan. One of our group feels that some more rock armour may be required, but we welcome the process to evaluate what does need to be required. We also noted at last meeting the concerns of the Dorset Council Legal Department about the Powerboat Club's proposal to run a trial of PWCs at Lyme Regis. We also noted that there will be no trial this year. A number of members, HCG members, have commented on the high cost of parking, as your previous speaker alluded to, and what impact these are having on mooring holders. You mentioned Harbour Watch launch. Indeed, it will happen on the 13th of April at the lifeboat station. It is, as you say, to be opened by the PCC, which we're grateful for. Now, a number of local organisations will be having stands in the lifeboat station. You would be surprised that the RNLI is first amongst them, doing water safety and life jacket checks, as well as the opportunity for people to meet the crew of the lifeboat and view the lifeboat. HM Coast Guard are also intending to come, as are Dorset Police, to have a stand and also do security marking of items. And I think, Chair, that concludes my report. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Nick. And we know you're busy celebrating the anniversary of the RNLI this year. So we look forward to seeing the events that are going to happen. I can confirm that I have followed up and have been speaking to environmental health about the issue of the health issues of the dogs on the fish landing area, and we are looking at the best possible way of trying to ensure food safety during unloading. But it's not quite resolved yet. But we haven't ignored that, Nick. It's underway.
Okay, thank you.
Any members got any questions for Nick or indeed for Gavin on those? If not, we now welcome Tim Day, who is going to give us the headlines from the Weymouth Harbour Consultative Group.
Morning all. Firstly, I'd like to echo the Chair's thanks to Andy Sargent's service as my predecessor, and we'll no doubt keep seeing Andy as the coxswain of the lifeboat with the upcoming 200 years memorial for the RNLI. The group felt it would be useful seeing how roads dominate the use of the harbour at Weymouth if a member of the Highways Committee or rep from them could attend the meetings, even if it's online, so we could ask questions direct to them, even though it's sort of outside the Harbour Committee's area. There was the non-commercial council berth holders queried the rise in fees, and Ed, the harbour master, explained the logic and the benchmarking behind it. They noted it, and we'll wait to see if they come back with anything else. The interesting question of flares came up. All commercial boats, the MCA require them to renew their flares every 3 years. Now, in times past, people used to dispose of these things at bonfire night or celebrations. But now if you do that, you get clobbered by a fine. Throwing them overboard, which people may have done in the past, isn't recommended either because they then wash up on the beaches and are blown up. There is no way for people to dispose of these things, and it would be useful if the council could talk to the MCA, the MMO, and start to put pressure on them, because people's garages and sheds will be no doubt filling up with these things. And the fire brigade, if ever one of these goes off, is going to be slightly alarmed by the Brock's benefit going off. So the final point, Ed will come on to the regeneration of the peninsula area, and the fishermen's rep put a plea in for a memorial to be raised there, for space to be put aside. And I think from the council's perspective, that would be a very easy win. That's all I've really got to say. Any questions? Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. And I think several of us around the room might well have old flares in a shed. So I think we'll all be grateful for a resolution for that issue. Thank you very much. And yes, I'm sure the memorial will be something that we will be able to assist with. Any questions for Tim?
Yes.
Yes, Nick.
Yes, on the subject of flares, I'll just pick up the point. There is some recent guidance by the government on flare disposal. Basically, you can only dispose at certain allocated points. From memory, I think the nearest one to you is in Southampton, but it's on the www.gov.uk website. I can send a link if that helps.
Thank you. That's very good. We can circulate that then to all the consultative groups.
Okay. Yeah.
Chair, I think the point is that that's Southampton. And, lots of people ain't going to go to Southampton. They're going to go to their garden shed.
It may be something we can look at as doing someone doing an annual trip to Southampton with a pickup. And we know where there's one or two pickups. Thank you. That is the Harbour Consultative Group minutes. We've noted all those, and thanks to all the work put in by not only the chairs, but all the members of the Consultative Group. They are our eyes and ears for all the harbours. We now move on to item 7, the Harbour Master updates, and we'll start with West Bay and Lyme Regis. So, James Radcliffe, Harbour Master, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. Starting with the stats for both harbours. They show on their season tickets launches and visiting boat nights that they haven't changed since last reporting in December. And this is normal for this time of year. The shops remain to do well, with Bridport being slightly down compared to last year, and Lyme's shop is massively exceeding last year. The divers' airfields at Bridport are down compared to this time last year, and while we're still well supported with the commercial, through periods through this winter with the weather and routine maintenance on their vessels has caused a reduction. Waiting lists for both harbours have seen a reduction, and everyone currently on the waiting list have now been offered moorings for this year. Both harbours have also seen a higher number than normal relinquish their moorings, with 22 in Bridport and 21 in Lyme. Offers have been going out, but with a slower uptake than normal, and our current occupancy in Bridport for leisure is 80%, 46% for commercial, and for Lyme it's 76% for leisure and 86% for commercial. These figures also include mooring holders that may not have renewed their moorings on time but still wish to have their moorings. Harbour staff, 3 members of the Harbour team have been on the 3-day Harbour Masters course, and they all feel this was a valuable course and they've benefited well from attending it. As Mark has already mentioned, Philip Wright, our Assistant Harbour Master at Lyme Regis, will be leaving us at the end of April, and we wish him well with his new job. And we will be interviewing on Friday of this week for his replacement. Both the Harbour Consultative Groups had their additional meeting in January and February, and we've already heard the minutes from these meetings. Update on the Harbour Revision Order is still sat with the MMO, and we've got no further update at this present time. Harbour Works, the dredging started at Lyme Regis and was completed on the 2nd of March, with the landside beach work starting next week. The dredger was then towed back to West Bay last Sunday and is now set up ready to start today, with completion expected in approximately 10 days' time. At Lyme Regis, the Harbour Master Storage Building, the works due to take place in December by National Grid and BT, with removing the pole, finally happened on the 16th of February. Having missed our original build slot with the contractor, we now hope to start building by the end of March, with completion in June. At Bridport, the quay wall work started on schedule on the 26th of February, and despite weather hampering the works at the start, they have progressed well and are currently on target to finish well in time for Easter. Waste and litter, as Gavin Brooker mentioned in the consultative minutes, to tackle some of the waste litter issues that have previously been raised around the harbour, we've been working alongside with colleagues in the waste teams to increase the capacity of the bins around the harbour. This will include the harbour team building housings for the wheelie bins to be stored in and being involved in the emptying of them when full. Our accidents and port marine safety code, this winter has seen the highest rainfall periods on record, and with this it has meant the storm gates at West Bay have been used on many occasions. Unfortunately, this results in increased silting in the inner harbour, and methods to remove this are currently being investigated. Our aids to navigations were inspected on the 6th of February, and everything was found to be in good order at Lyme Regis, with one defect at Bridport where a day mark requires some painting. The Harbour Watch schemes have both been mentioned by the consultative groups and by Mark. So Lyme Regis, we're opening on the 13th of April, and at Bridport the 20th of April. The events will be opened by the Dorset Crime Commissioner David Sidwick, and our committee chair Mark and Harbours manager Ed will be attending both the events, and we wish to open the invitation up to all the committee members should you wish to attend. The Harbour consultative groups will have representatives at both the events, giving the sectors of the community who they represent the opportunity to come and speak to them. Our events for this year, as you can see from the Harbour report, there's a big list of events for both harbours. Just hoping on the weather improves to be able to host them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, James, for that comprehensive report. Any questions for James? Yes, Richard.
Yeah, firstly, just to thank James for the walk round he did for the Independents, Philip, Mark and I in February. Really good walk round the two harbours, so thank you for that. My question, I note Weymouth had a training set out for enforcement, so statement gathering, body-worn cameras, etc., which was an audit finding, I think, the last audit at Bridport. Is that training going to be planned or extended to the Bridport and Lyme teams?
James or Ed, can you come in on that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, absolutely. I'll get onto my report in a minute for the training that's been going on in Weymouth, which is directly, of course, related to the imminent general directions. Certainly with the process we're going through with Bridport and Lyme, with harbour revision orders and looking to have new sets of general directions, we are going to be looking at the enforcement training, conflict resolution training for the teams across the harbours, with the Weymouth team being considerably bigger than Lyme Regis and Bridport. For this February, we were only able to get in my group. But yes, we're absolutely looking to extend that out to the other harbours as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Does that answer your question, Richard?
Yes, thank you. As I say, it was kind of a focus on the audit at Bridport, and I think we raised the issue a few meetings ago. So, no, I'm glad to hear it's going to be extended. Thank you.
Good, thanks. Any further questions? If not, we'll move on to Ed Carter, Weymouth Harbour Master and Harbours Manager. Ed.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. If I could, just before I go on to my update, thank you very much for your kind words, Chairman. I'm very excited to be starting this new role with Dorset and looking forward very much to working with James and his teams in both harbours. In response to Nick's comments recently at his update, I'm absolutely going to be involving myself a lot more down in both of the harbours. I'll be attending all of the consultative group meetings and, of course, the upcoming Harbour Watch launches. But I'm also I'll be contacting the chairman of both groups, so I'll see if I can meet them individually with James ahead of those meetings so I can get to know them a little bit better. So yes, I look forward to that. Thank you very much. Moving on to the Weymouth update. Just looking at our stats to start with, our marina berths are very much following the similar profile to previous years, with this winter being an almost carbon copy of previous winter, with interest in our marina berths for the upcoming season already being strong. And since I've put this report together, we are actually starting to see a slight increase again following that curve heading towards the summer, the renewal process being well underway with our customers. Our commercial berths remain at almost 100% let, with the remaining spaces being less popular due to access issues, the midstream pontoon, for example, or we do have some size restrictions at some of the berths. The waiting list for commercial berths does remain strong, but certainly with some of the vessels we have on there, the larger charter fishing vessels, they're quite wide at the beam. So yes, again, we're struggling to fit in some of the ones on the waiting list due to the size restrictions. The statistics for the last period, and certainly looking against last year, we've managed to finishing the year slightly ahead of profile with our visitor revenue. The slipway PwC permit revenue is down, as well as the number of bridge lifts and number of vessels transiting through the bridge, albeit only a very small reduction. To be honest, with how the weather has been over the last few months, I'm surprised that we're not further behind, to be quite honest. The weather, certainly it barely seems to have stopped raining for the last few months. We are seeing an increase in the number of non-resident fishing vessels visiting the harbour, but this is partly down to us improving the way that we're monitoring things there, so I think we're capturing everything as we should be. Harbour use generally, as we all know, the winter period has been characterised by some particularly fierce weather events with very heavy rainfall, strong winds, broken by some very cold spells, and we've had 10 named storms hitting the UK over the past few months. Predominantly due to Weymouth's favourable position, we have fared very well in the last few months. We're very well protected from the southwesterly winds, and our proactive maintenance really does show that we're kind of on top of everything. And we've only had a couple of boat covers being removed in heavy winds, rainfall with vessels needing some pump out, and a couple of the older copper water supply pipes have burst in the marinas, but of course we've been on and fixed those straight away. Use of the harbour has been very sporadic. The fishing fleet's been confined to port during a lot of the high winds and very little in the way of recreational traffic movements. Winter berthing has been very popular this winter. Our moorings officers, as I've said, are already very busy behind the scenes. We're working through the renewals period and through the renewals process and working through our waiting lists as well to offer any berths that have recently been vacated. One notable event over the winter, of course, was the Christmas Day swim, which is increasingly popular. Went off very well this year with around 350 persons jumping into the sea on Christmas Day when they swim across the harbour from the cove and getting out just outside the Harbour Office at Customs House Quay. It is a very well-attended event, and consequently, of course, the safety precautions are very high with safety vessels, kayakers, and people marshalling the event and counting people in and out of the water to make sure that everyone's well accounted for. It is very well managed, and we're very involved in the risk assessment process and the event planning process as well, and we have staff there on the day to assist should anything happen. In the last reporting period, we've recorded a few notable incidents since the last meeting. Partially sunken vessel in the inner harbour due to due to rainfall. Some tables outside the Stone Pier Cafe were blown into the water by high winds. Some tangled lines in the marina, blown fuse at the town bridge meant the safety barriers couldn't be lowered, although that was very quickly rectified and with only a slight delay there. Numerous vessel covers suffering damage from high winds. We had an intoxicated person jumping from the town bridge into the harbour, although no injuries sustained, and police and ambulance were on scene promptly. Only one incident that requires noting here was an incident with the Weymouth Sailing Club Boxing Day race, where in light wind conditions a vessel was navigating into the harbour under sail. The vessel was unable to tack due to the light wind and actually came up against, very slowly admittedly, against the harbour wall at Commercial Berth 3. In trying to fend off, the hand of a member of the crew did get caught between the bow of the vessel and sustained a crush injury which required treatment at hospital. I've discussed this at length with the Sailing Club and it's all been reviewed. Upon investigation, nothing in the actions of the skipper or the vessel were unusual or negligent or against regulations, and it's been put down to misadventure. The Sailing Club have reviewed all their risk assessments in light of the incident, and advice is being held at race briefings and further consideration given to the planning of race routes. Moving on to operations, powers of general direction for Weymouth. There is a report coming a little bit later in the committee, but I'm pleased to report the consultation with the RYA on the general directions has recently been concluded, and the RYA has confirmed they're satisfied that their comments of the directions have been considered, and they do endorse the adoption. As I say, a full report coming on that one shortly. No oil spill or oil pollution events that have required external notification or deployment of spill resources have been attended. There is an MCA oil counter-pollution exercise taking place in Portland today, which has been quite widely put around. And again, that's the MCA working to make sure that all their counter-pollution measures are in place and being tested properly. Staff training. It's a core requirement of the Port Marine Safety Code to have trained and competent staff to effectively manage the wide range of duties of a harbour authority and the safe and efficient management of a port. We carry out refresher training on a regular basis. And at the end of January, many of the Weymouth team were joined by colleagues from Bridport and Lyme and attended a Level 2 oil spill response course, which was delivered by our contractors, Adler and Allen. Forming part of our competent harbour authority compliance, regular spill exercises are carried out throughout the year. We have another Tier 2 exercise scheduled for May this year, which will involve a test of the Weymouth oil spill plan, where we'll be simulating an event in the harbour. We're going to be, again, running that in conjunction with Adler and Allen, our Tier 2 contractors, and we're going to be carrying out a full notification exercise, tabletop, and deployment of containment and collection resources. We'll be inviting representatives from the MCA, Environment Agency, Natural England, the Dorset Council Emergency Planning Team, Harbours Advisory and a consultative group, among others, to come and observe. And it forms a very large part of our next oil spill response plan review, which is due this year. So again, due to that exercise, we'll be reviewing the oil spill plan at the same time. A lot more further training has taken place early this season. As James mentioned, some of the staff from Bridport and Lyme were joined by both my assistant harbour masters in taking on the 3-day harbour masters course in Southampton, which is run by IDG Maritime. The 3-day course features lectures and discussions, practical exercises, as well as participation by the MCA, MIB, MMO, marine legal experts, and other specialists from the UK's port operators and security advisors. The course covers Port Marine Safety Code, national occupational standards, marine legislation, and environmental issues. And certainly for me, taking on that course quite a few years ago, it was a really good introduction to a more senior role within harbour operations, and very worthwhile. And as James said, all of the staff have reported that they found that course extremely informative and useful. The Weymouth Harbour team have just attended a full week of training in February, ahead of the start of the season, with Easter being very early this year. We went through risk assessments, operating procedures, administrative training, accident reporting, manual handling, towage, first aid, conflict resolution, de-escalation, and we were very fortunate to have members of our legal team come to chat to us about, with regards to enforcement, evidence gathering, statement writing, looking at the Weymouth Harbour general directions, effective patrolling, issuing of cautions, pace training, and this sort of stuff. So yeah, we're looking with the general directions shortly to come into effect. We're hoping that this training really does provide the harbour team, both on and off the water, really very vital skills to carry out their duties effectively. We are planning a full emergency exercise for later in the year. Plans are very much in sketch form at the moment. We'll bring further details to the committee as plans develop. Dorset Council has contracted ABP Mayor to provide designated person services for the council. Part of the service includes the provision of auditing to establish if the Harbour Authority is compliant with the requirements of the code. And the scope of the audit includes a review of the Harbour Authority performance against the standards and any aspects that don't comply with or fully address the requirements of the code identified and then recommendations made. The first audit of Weymouth is scheduled for the 19th of March, and the results of the audit again will be presented at a future meeting of this committee. We recently had another Trinity House audit due to the way the schedules fall, and this is actually our third, I think, within a 12-month period now. But again, they found them to be in good and efficient order, so no problems on the side of our Trinity House and aids to navigation. Reporting on harbour works. All of these works work towards, so strategic goal 1 of the Dorset Harbour strategy, is to maintain safe working harbours and provide high quality infrastructure and facilities. The following harbour works are all being carried out in pursuit of this goal. The Weymouth Quay regeneration work is progressing very well. Foundations for all the major elements of the project across the site have been either completed or are well underway. At the time of writing the report, in the immediately preceding weeks, the ducting across the site was almost complete. The bases for the davit cranes were in place, and various other bits, things like completion of the fuel tank and separator slabs and the associated drainage, and the eastern ramp of the public walkway, light and CCTV columns, void repair are all going on. We've now, in the last few days, started to see the fence lines, the new fence lines going up. We're also starting to see the installation of the cold stores for the landed catch, bait stores, ice-making facilities, this sort of thing. It's really good to see things finally coming up out of the ground. There's been a lot of digging of holes, and it's nice to see things now being repaired. So yeah, we're running pretty much towards completion at the end of April. There have been a couple of small delays. Where we've, for example, in the electricity, where we're putting in new high voltage and low voltage connections across the site, SSE have to come and make those connections. They've had a lot of pressure on their teams this winter with the weather and also with illness in their team, so there's been a few delays there. We're also awaiting the final approval of the MMO for the fuel pontoon. We've had the Environment Agency permits now, but the MMO are reporting that they are running slightly behind with all of these things. So we're pushing on that, but it's likely that the fuel pontoon will be one of the very last things that gets installed in the project. The steering group that I've reported on before, which was intended initially to work on the further beautification of only the pleasure pier, was expanded in scope to encompass the public realm developments across this whole project. We've split after we've had a couple of the meetings with the steering group now, and we've had some very, very good input from members of that group. We've split it into two phases now. Phase one being the setting of street furniture, lighting, etc. And then phase two really is linking the area with existing public trails such as the heritage, arts and sculpture trails, and also, of course, putting up information boards with details of historical elements such as the Nothe Fort, Weymouth Part and the D-Day landings. We're also looking to have information on commercial fishing activities, what's being landed at Weymouth, where's it going, this sort of thing. And as Tim mentioned earlier, we're also looking to have working with the representative for the fishermen to see if we can have a memorial put on site for local fishermen that have been lost at sea over the years. Works on Wall 4. Since I've written this report, there have been some developments with Wall 4, so I'm going to skip over this one and leave the update to my colleague Matt Penny. I think it's probably best. Town Bridge maintenance works. Maintenance works on the Town Bridge were completed on schedule at the end of November, and works were all carried out as planned, and the Town Bridge is fully operational. Our commercial berths are continuing to be well used. During the delivery of the Weymouth Quay Regeneration Project, we have had to move our commercial berth holders for the winter, and they've come up alongside the Alpha and Bravo visitor pontoons. These larger vessels will return to their usual berths upon completion of the work, and we've had no other notable traffic during this reporting period. Neither have we had any acts of pilotage. Some significant events relevant to harbour operations or access. We, of course, have got the 200th anniversary of the RNLI this year. There is a parade of sail planned for the 14th of May, and I'm meeting very soon with the RNLI so we can look at how that's shaping up, which boats will be here and how that will all run. There will be other events held throughout the year, but I'm yet to have those confirmed by the RNLI. It's the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings, and as I understand it, the Nothe Fort have got various events going on this year. It's unclear if any of these events at the moment relate to harbour operations, but of course I'll bring further information forward as it comes up. Events that are happening around the harbour side: Fair in the Square, Wessex Folk Festival, Weymouth Carnival, the Seafood Festival, and Iron Man. The dates are there in my update as well, but again, we're working with the organisers of those to ensure that disruption to harbour operations is kept to a minimum. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ed, for that comprehensive. Yes, Richard.
Two questions, two issues really. Firstly, on the safety incidents, I note in the consultative committee meeting there was quite a little bit more detail. One aspect was someone jumped in the water to assist a person. I just wondered if we had any more information on that, because it's not good practice to jump into the water and help. You can get yourself into a lot of trouble. So, and the second one was there was an unreported incident. I wondered if that had happened on harbour land, because I'd be concerned if it was reported the MCA were dealing with it. But if it happened on harbour land, they must have a duty to report to the harbour as well. So. Two aspects on the safety side, and then one further issue. If you want to take the safety one.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. The incident you refer to was someone entering the water. That was the incident where we had a person that jumped from the Town Bridge, being quite inebriated. It just so happened that right next to the Town Bridge, on one of the commercial berths, one of our local fishermen was on his boat, and during the winter he wears a dry suit for his own protection while he's working out at sea. He was immediately on hand as the person entered the water, and he took it upon himself to enter the water straight after the person and help them get to the pontoon. You're absolutely right. We wouldn't encourage people to jump into the harbour themselves, certainly at that time of year when the water is cold and there is life-saving apparatus around the place. But I'm happy to report in that situation, it was okay. I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure which event you're referring to that was out of our jurisdiction the MCA dealt with. Apologies.
In the Weymouth minutes, there was an item reported about someone jumping from a building, I think, that you weren't aware of. And I just wondered what the reporting mechanisms were. I just wondered, A, if it had happened on harbour land, why that wasn't communicated.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, yes, this incident, this was actually a person that climbed the Pavilion Theatre, so it is outside of statutory harbour land. The Pavilion Theatre have their own lease with Dorset Council, and the area is outside of our jurisdiction. This was a person that climbed the theatre and was, I believe, threatening to jump. The RNLI, I think, were informed, because I think the MCA were called. A member of the public called 999 and asked for the Coast Guard, and it wasn't until after the event that we heard about it, but there was certainly no harbour involvement. It did take place off harbour land. I am working with the RNLI to see if there is a way that we can have more of a defined representative between the RNLI and Weymouth and the Weymouth Harbour Authority. The MCA are quite loath to share data on incidents that are not involving us. There's a clear data protection issue, surrounding personal details there. But we do work very closely with the RNLI, and certainly incidents that we're involved with, we do report on.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. I was just concerned if it had happened on harbour land and we weren't being communicated with, there was a breakdown in the systems, but it sounded slightly grey area, I think, on the pavilion, isn't it? So, but I'm glad you're trying to establish communication with the RNLI. My second question really was, I note there's been accelerated silting in the West Bay, Bridport harbours as a result of sluice gates opening and the flooding down. Is Weymouth expecting or anticipating similar issues in the harbour as a result of the Riverway flooding? And having living right next to the Riverway, I can guarantee it's put a lot of water down into the harbour this year.
Yes, thank you. We had our annual survey, which took place just before December, and we've had the results back from the annual survey, and the residual comparisons are showing that movement of silt across the harbour and is relatively low. We have, of course, in very recent weeks seen huge plumes of sediment coming down through the Riverway, through Radipole Lake and into the harbour as they're releasing floodwaters. We are not scheduled another survey until later on this year. It's hard to know what impact the recent flooding will have had, but certainly up until, like I say, midwinter and Christmas of this year, the harbour in general. There are a couple of spots within the marinas themselves that I think within a couple of years we may well be looking at doing some plough dredging just to flatten off some of the higher spots. But generally within the navigable channels, the harbour entrance, the cove, the depths are good and improving in most places, and we're certainly not seeing at the moment much sediment or sand coming round from Weymouth Bay into the harbour entrance either. So yeah, no plans to dredge in the immediate future, but we are monitoring it. Of course, it'll be interesting to see in the next round of surveys what effect any of the sedimentation over the latter part of this winter has had.
Thank you. Does that satisfy your questions, Richard? Yes, Mark Saxby.
Ed, good to see the Christmas Day swim. I know between the 1st of May and September the 30th, the water quality at the beach had been excellent and tested 15 times. But as part of the risk assessment of the harbour, is the water quality taken into account?
The water quality of the Christmas Day swim is monitored through reports by Wessex Water. There is no actual testing that takes place of the water, to my knowledge. It is generally accepted within the risk assessments that swimming in the sea is not advised immediately after periods of heavy rainfall. Bacterial die-off from sewage overflow events, for example, bacterial die-off in salt water is very quick, and within 24 to 48 hours after a rainfall event, the water quality does tend to go back to as it was. So again, within the risk assessments, I think if there was some very, very heavy rainfall the day before and we were seeing a lot of sedimentation, that would be making us think then probably it's not a wise thing to do for people to swim. But like I say, to date, there's no actual water testing going on, certainly by the Harbour Authority or by the organisers of the event.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks, Ed, for your response. I just wanted to highlight the fact that many of you may have seen that the Seafood Festival was reported to have been cancelled, but we have a new organiser in Sean Cooper of Wayfish who's stepped in to ensure that it is going to go ahead on the peninsula again this year. So just clarification there. Thank you. If there's no further questions, our recommendation is that the committee note the Harbour Master report. So we content. Thank you. Item 8. Now we hand over to Matt Penny, the lead for the FSERM engineering update. So, Matt, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start in Bridport Harbour. The Harbour Master gave an update for dredging. We've successfully completed in Lyme Regis, and we're now at West Bay, and that's due to be completed before the Easter weekend. Inspections and repairs in Bridport Harbour. The 2024 scheduled inspections by FSERM engineers are due in the summer months, so this summer. Temporary flood barriers were successfully deployed during Storm Kieran in November, and they're effective at redirecting seawater during that storm, which is pleasing. We work closely with the harbour team to deploy those barriers, so that they were successfully deployed. And following Storm Kieran, repairs were completed to concrete slabs on the Jurassic Pier in January. Harbour Wall A works. So Harbour Wall A is showing signs of settlement. It's currently being monitored by our coastal risk management team. The necessary work has been assessed, identified, scheduled, and indeed the proposal is in the council capital programme. For efficiency's sake, and I'll come on to this in a second, for Harbour Wall B, for efficiencies, we're looking to combine the works for Wall A and Wall B this autumn. That should hopefully provide savings and relevant efficiencies to the construction. Harbour Wall B is the wall around the back of the Harbour Master's office that's currently under construction. So that started successfully in February, and the sheet piling element of that scheme has been completed. The works are scheduled, the works commence as planned, and they're scheduled to be completed as planned at this current time. We are in the process of, the intent is to split the scheme into 2 distinct phases. Phase 1 will last until the Easter weekend, which is stabilising the toe of the structure and the wall in general, and then the main repair for the wall will be undertaken in October in the autumn onwards. This we felt was best compromise with respect to the economic impact that the works can have upon the kiosk owners and the harbour in general, and the disruption that it will cause. There is a small risk that should be noted that, or a low risk that should be noted, that the wall could, in theory, even though it's been stabilised, could still fail because the main repair work hasn't been completed. We've deemed that a low risk, and we're going to be monitoring and managing that situation. If that did occur, we would have to step in and carry out the main works as planned. But at the moment, they are scheduled for October 2024. Ongoing engagement with the kiosk owners and surrounding businesses, harbour team, etc., is underway. We met them earlier this week as well, and that will be ongoing throughout the entire project until completion this time next year. If I move on to Lyme Regis, I covered the dredging and so is the Harbour Master element. If I cover the inspections, again, like the rest of our harbours, they're always scheduled. We try to schedule them for the summer, and indeed that's when they're scheduled this year. So Lyme Regis asset inspections will be undertaken in the summer months. The cob repairs, which has been referenced earlier in this meeting, there was storm damage last year, and we were monitoring that. We undertook mitigation measures, and we've put in place an emergency response plan that can be implemented if indeed is required. Currently, the high wall structure is open to the public as normal. Again, following Storm Kieran in November 2023, minor damage to the cob, namely displacement of the grout, causing trip hazards, was identified. These defects have now been repaired. However, the Coastal Risk Management team carried out additional inspections along the seaward base of the cob buildings This has identified that the supporting wall is in poor condition. So we've engaged specialist contractor advice and also liaising with our property team, who are now managing that situation with our support. Lyme Regis Environmental Improvement Scheme Phase 5. Engagement is ongoing with the public stakeholders and commercial users, as well as the final design process underway, and now licensing and consenting applications are being progressed with our statutory partners, namely Historic England, Natural England and the Marine Management Organisation. The project team are currently progressing discussions with potential funders with the intent to close the current funding gap we've got with this scheme. In the meantime, we have completed investigations that has further informed the design process with a view to value engineer, i.e. reduce the scale requirement of the design and thereby the overall cost of the scheme itself. Construction is still scheduled to commence summer 2025, and the reason it's summer 2025 is that the marine users, when we've consulted them, have all said the outer wall works must be done during the summer because of the sea state. We can't carry out that work in the autumn or the winter, but because it's the outer wall work we would do in the summer, it should have a reduced impact upon COB users and businesses. If I move on to Weymouth Harbour, nothing to note in dredging terms for Weymouth, but of course we work closely with Ed and his team, and if there was a requirement, we would support them in carrying out that work. For inspections and repairs, again, 2024, summer 2024 scheduled summer inspections, and it's been noted that the Stone Pier surfacing works, there's a requirement for surfacing works on the Stone Pier for trip hazards, and we're awaiting contractor availability to commence these works. Replacement of missing grab rails and ladders have been discussed with the harbour team and has progressed, and along Wall 2, which is adjacent to Nove Cafe, a missing block has been identified and is awaiting repairs, repair options and prices. Weymouth Flood and Coastal Erosion Risk Management Scheme Phase 1, so this is the large scheme that is in development. The outline business case is currently being developed so we can get a draw on external funding from DEFRA for this scheme. We're awaiting confirmation for external funding approval to investigate the impacts of surface water flooding within the scheme area. We've had confirmation that that surface water flooding funding has come through, so we can draw that down now, which is excellent and allows us to progress the scheme further, after which the baseline surface water modelling can commence. So we'll be commencing that shortly now, having got the funding in. Baseline coastal modelling has been concluded, and do something, i.e. measures to put in place above what we currently do. Modelling scope is under development, so the scope for that modelling is underway. Geotechnical and groundwater assessments are to commence shortly, and the scope for beach recession modelling is in development. A high-level feasibility review of the proposed tidal barrier is underway, with a view to making a judgment as to whether we're likely to include it within the scheme or we're not. That will have a further impact upon the land requirements on the peninsula, planning, local plan, etc. So that it's an important review that's undertaken by the team. The indication is that a substantial funding gap can be expected, which is, as I've expressed previously, we're experiencing across a lot of our schemes at the moment. That's due to high construction costs, inflation, and funding eligibility, which is capped, i.e. the benefits you can draw down from grant funding are capped, is what I mean by that. So costs have increased, but benefits haven't. A review of the appraisal approach and preferred design options are underway to identify maximum grant funding benefits and efficiencies, and a partnership funding strategy is to be developed to address the funding shortfall. So we hope to put a strategy in place to work with partners in order to close that gap and make the scheme viable going forward. Harbour Walls F&G, which is on the peninsula. This project is in the late detailed design element phase of it. So we are waiting. We should have our detailed design in the next week or two, pending our early contractor involvement review. From then, we can finalise our licensing consenting with the relevant bodies, planning, MMO, Natural England, etc. And indeed, then deliver on the requirements of the LUF funding that we've got and the plans of the council for the peninsula area. So that scheme's underway. We're also in discussions around with colleagues around whether we can enhance the public realm area adjacent to the wall and not just reinstate as is currently there. If we can find that extra funding, we can hopefully enhance the public realm and improve the general area prior to the development that may well come forward in future. Ed referenced in his report Harbour Wall 4, which is the North Quay frontage. So I think most of the committee will be aware that a failure of a 15-metre section of wall occurred on February 18th. The wall was being monitored at that time, and the risk of failure had been assessed. So it was not completely unexpected that this would occur. We didn't anticipate that it would, but unfortunately it materialised. A temporary repair has stabilised the area and the section that's failed, and that will be now repaired as part of the main works. So construction was underway. There was no risk to the public. Compound area was in place. Marine exclusion zone was in place. So risk to the public was low, and the risk to operatives who were working on site had been risk assessed, and indeed no operatives were injured at all. It occurred on a Sunday, and there was no one present on site until obviously after the failure. The incident has been reported to HSE, and we'll wait to see whether they require further information. The impact of the failure is that there's a new completion date, which is now 10th of May, and the forecast cost has increased by approximately £70,000. However, there is still some unknowns that we require further understanding of, and that may increase costs further. Namely voiding behind the wall, etc., which has been realised. But that assessment has not fully taken place. Weymouth Strategic Flood Risk Assessment Level 2. So this provides the flood risk evidence for Weymouth in support of development of the Dorset Local Plan and provides the base for the FSERM scheme OBC that I've referenced above. The work has involved modelling of all sources of flooding within Weymouth and around the harbour. We have been in discussions with the EA for some time around finalising that report and indeed releasing it, and I can confirm that the report has been released and is now in the public domain. This was with the agreement of the EA, and indeed will inform things like the flood risk standing advice that the council and the EA agree to, and the impact upon planning in the area. That concludes my report, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Matt. A very comprehensive report, because there's an awful lot going on at the moment. I think probably at the busiest stage we've been at in the last few years. Any questions from any members for Matt on his very comprehensive report? If not, thank you very much. The committee happy to note the FSERM report. Thank you. We now move on to item 9, the budget monitoring report. And it's going to be, I'm not sure who is going to start on this one. Who is it going to be? You, James, for Bridport and Lyme Regis.
Thank you, Chair. So the budget monitoring for Bridport, the expenditure overall is expected to be 103,000 adverse, and the main variances for this are overspend on internal charges due to the management fee for car parking services. Overspend on salary due to the recent pay award and training costs for harbour staff. Minor overspend on travel budgets through payroll claims, and a significant overspend on the supplies and services budget. This is due to the cost of dredging, where we've done 1.5 dredges this financial year. So the last year's dredging was done in March and April, and this year's in March. So the income is 87,000 favourable, and the main income from this is due to the harbour side car parks and the boating related income, which should generate a minor surplus also. Expected reserve to movements to reserves for Bridport is predicted to be 62,000. For Lyme Regis, the expenditure overall is 27,000 adverse, and the main overspends is due to the training costs again, same as Bridport for staff, and increased on transport budgets, increased costs to the cost of maintaining the JCB. On the income, expected to be 31,000 favourable, and this is mainly down to boat-related income lines and the car parking facility with the AMPR. There's no reserves to movement to reserves for Lyme, and the predicted underspend of just over 4,000 will return to the corporate centre. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions for James? Yes, Richard.
Yeah, two questions. I think we raised this previously, but just the internal management fee is quite a variation on a small budget, and I know there was an attempt to try and get this resolved. I think it'd be helpful for Bridport's planning to get that resolved. I'm not sure when that's planned. And the second question was, I know there was an overspend on ANPR costs, and I wondered what that was associated with. Is that car parking, or and the associated question with that, is that a harbour cost or a parking cost?
The one for the ANPR was the cost of the installation of the system beginning of this financial year.
Yeah, I think my question is, what's the purpose of the ANPR in terms of?
Yeah, sorry, it controls the slipway area at Lyme Regis, so it monitors that area, and there's a machine there for people to pay out.
Just for clarification, that's because that car parking is purely a harbour operation, not the Dorset Council car parks.
I understand. Yeah, and resolution on the internal costs.
It's to do with the level of income and activity at Lyme Regis and the level of administrative support that Dorset Council supplies to the harbour. James, do you want to just elaborate on that?
Yeah, the internal charge is a charge from the car parking services for the amount of income that the harbour car parks generate, mainly at Bridport, and Weymouth is the same as well, but it's an internal conversation that needs to be completed, yeah.
I think, Richard, you were referring to the other charge that Dorset Council puts on the harbour, weren't you?
I think it was I think it's related to the car parking. I think the question was, there's quite a large variation on the budget, and it's quite a large uncertainty, and it was just a question of getting that uncertainty resolved, as it's an internal matter.
I think we'll probably have to come back to the next meeting, or an answer outside the meeting, Richard, if you're happy with that. Okay, Claire Connolly, the administration manager for Weymouth, is now going to take us through the budget for Weymouth.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. So the budget forecasts for 23-24 for Weymouth are given at Appendix 3. The financial picture for Weymouth remains healthy and with a predicted surplus of £97,000. This, along with the budgeted surplus, will be transferred into the reserves at the year end, leaving a forecasted reserve balance of 2.6 million. Variances related to income are detailed at paragraph 3.4. This is an improving picture from the last budget monitoring report. Key areas that we think are worth highlighting are that income from annual and temporary marina berths are on track. Recreational income has been affected this year with a reduced number of visiting vessels and users of the slipway over the summer, but there has been an increase in the number of customers taking up winter berthing in the outer harbour. Infrastructure is now in place so that electricity taken by larger visiting vessels can be charged per unit. It was previously a fixed night fee that was considered too low for these larger vessels, so this will result in an increase in rechargeable income. There's also increased income in harbour-owned car parks. As previously reported, there has been a reduction overall in income from commercial berthing. However, more recently, local firm Carlin Boat Charters have taken an additional commercial berth, which means the commercial area remains busy, with commercial vessels owned and operated by Aquatic Towage Marine and Masterplan Offshore. There has been some underspends on costs this year, as detailed in paragraph 3.5. Sorry, that's meant to say overspends. Insurance and energy costs are expected to be over budget, which is in line with previous spends and will be forecasted in future years. There has been an effect of the pay award and a settlement of payments made to members of staff who work bank holidays. This has resulted in some increases in salary costs. This has been slightly offset by some underspends on business rates, marketing, and some savings against seasonal staff. Paragraph 3.6, there's an update on projects from the asset management plan. This includes projects that have been carried forward from 2022. And there is some details on the commitments at paragraph 3.7 from the Harbour Reserve for this financial year. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Claire. Richard.
Yeah, just a question on the reserves. I note in the November report we made a provision for contribution to the regeneration programme, which I think equates to just over 10% of the value of the project. I understand there's some cost pressures on this project, and it's been a long-running one. I'd just like to ask, could we, the project's nearly ended now, and it's going through its final stages, could we undertake a lessons learned review at the end of this project to see what went well and what might have done better? I'm conscious Weymouth is going to be spending quite a lot of capital over the next few years, and I think just understanding how well this went, which is kind of standard industry practice, would serve us in good stead for the next capital spends.
Thank you. I think, Ed, I'll ask you to come in on this one, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. No, I absolutely agree. I think that would be a very beneficial review to have a look at this project as a whole. As projects go, this has been a tricky one to step into. The project itself has been running for many years with an initial contractor in place that then became financially unoperational, with a new contractor then being procured later on. 3 separate harbour masters have had their own inputs into this process, and it has been a very long and complex one, absolutely. Especially, of course, as the planning for this project has been through the pandemic, with all of the various cost implications that brought with it. So yeah, I think this review would be a very sensible thing, and I'd be happy to undertake that at the end and bring the results to the committee later in the year.
Thank you, and thanks for the point raised. Any other points for Claire on Weymouth? Good. Okay, our recommendation is to note the current budget monitoring figures and the forecast for all 3 harbours. We're happy to do that. Thank you. Item 10 is the monitoring and review of the Marine Safety Plan. And Ed, you're going to present this report.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm afraid, sorry, you're going to be hearing a lot more from me at these meetings now, so I'll try and keep things brief. So yes, at the Harbours, just as a brief summary, at the Harbours Advisory Committee meeting on the 8th of December 2022, the portfolio holder for Highways, Travel and Environment approved the Dorset Council Harbours Marine Safety Plan. A safety plan is a requirement of the Port Marine Safety Code, and it identifies and prioritises necessary improvements to achieve full compliance with the code. The plan sets out the actions and a timetable for delivery and is to be monitored at Harbours Advisory Committee meetings, and in doing so, progress against the plan will be publicly reported. The recommendation here today is to review the report and comment upon the progress. If I could just highlight the safety plan as it stands, looking at page 86 of the papers pack. Running through the items, the top few are just an annual general review, which happen as we progress through. So the review of progress and report to the committee annually, which we do. The Harbours Committee and duty holder to be aware of the top navigational risks, which we do review annually. Review of the safety management system and procedures, annual or after every accident incident. And of course, these items are predominantly covered in the Harbour Masters updates at the quarterly meetings. The review of the Bridport Competent Harbour Authority status, the current update there, as James has already briefly mentioned. The review was completed in September 2023. We are awaiting the conclusion of the Harbour Revision Order and the creation of the general directions prior to the final removal of the pilotage service. Linking in there with the general directions review for Bridport and Lyme Regis, this will start when the Harbour Revision Orders come into effect at Bridport and Lyme. Again, they're currently with the MMO following successful conclusion of consultation. It is worth noting that the MMO are under increasing pressure with regards to this area of harbour legislation. To my understanding, there are currently no less than 13 harbour revision orders sat with the MMO waiting to move through the process. It is well known within the harbours industry there are these issues, and certainly there is quite a lot of lobbying going on towards the MMO to try and free up some resources to really take a look at these. Unfortunately, these processes are stalled currently because we're waiting for the input from the Marine Management Organisation. The review of the general directions for Weymouth, there's a paper coming next on that, so I won't update any further here. The review of the latest designated person audit recommendations. So this was added to the safety plan in March 2024. So this is the first time, and this was following an audit by the designated person. Any recommendation were made to present it to the committee. And of course, most recently, the results from the audit of Bridport were presented to the committee in September 2023 by James Hannon of ABP Mayor. As requested by members, we've also added to the safety plan an independent audit programme so that we can track the progress there. So, of course, we've got Weymouth coming up on the 19th of March this year. And then cyclically then over a 3-year period, Lyme Regis, Bridport and Weymouth will all be audited on that schedule, as you can see there, with the exact date, of course, to be confirmed closer to the time. The last item that we've added onto the safety plan so we can track is to implement an accident and incident trend reporting system with some KPIs for the report to the duty holder and the Harbours Committee. We currently have the current systems for the 3 Harbours I'm looking to sort of standardise those, and I'm going to be working with James and his and colleagues in both harbours to see how we can standardise our incident reporting across the 3 harbours. We've already done some work in Weymouth already to try and make it easier for the public to report incidents to us. And certainly with regards to analysis, I can see that there's further work to be done on looking at the way we categorise incidents. For myself, I feel that some of the categories we use at the moment are a bit woolly, and we're not able to analyse. We do have the data. We have very comprehensive data. It's just not currently in a very good format to be analysed so that we can look at incident trends. And again, a real key part of the Port Marine Safety Code compliance is the incident reporting, which then feeds into our risk assessment system, risk assessment and review, which then feeds back round in this endless loop. So again, I feel we can tighten up those things. I'm going to be chatting to James Hannon at our audit about some of the ideas that I've got for Weymouth, and then again, I'll be looking to chat with James to see if we can bring those in across, so that the 3 Dorset harbours are following the same pattern and again reporting on the same things. So yeah, that's a brief update on the safety plan. Happy to take any questions, of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed. And it's been an aim of the Harbours Committee since its formation that we should continue to recognise the uniqueness of the 3 harbours, but standardise some of the operations and administrative areas and the reporting. So I'm glad we're working towards it. Richard.
Yeah. Just first comment. I think just a reminder: the Marine Safety Plan is the Harbour Authority's vehicle, really, for directing strategic improvement across its harbours. I think it's been implemented well, and I'm glad to see it's being updated. That's making it effective. I have just one minor point. I wondered for item 9 on the safety reporting whether we could add a target date for implementation. And it's not for today, the date, but if you just give some thought to when that might come into play.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll be brutally honest, as I was writing it, I wondered about a target date myself. There's a huge amount of work going on currently. I will absolutely look to progress this through this year, but certainly as we come to the next update, I'll look to put a date on this, and I would hope that we would have this hopefully tied off as we move into the summer season, really, because I think it's not that much of a complex process to do. We're just working on a very large pile of priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I hope that's adequate response from Ed.
No, that's absolutely fine. I know I'm aware there is a lot of work going on. I think if we, Ed's in the detail, and he'll know his timescales. I think if we can just get a focus on when we're likely to see that reporting, it would be helpful for us as well.
No, thank you. It's always very useful to have your reminders on the progress of the safety. Any further questions from members for Ed? If not, again, our recommendation, and I think we've done it, is to review the report and comment on the progress. So if members are happy, we'll move on to item 11, Weymouth Harbour General Directions. And again, this is Ed to present.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm extremely pleased to be finally bringing this paper in front of the committee. The process for the general directions was well underway when I came into post just over a year ago now. And of course, we went into the consultation. It has been quite a frustrating last 6 months. We have statutory consultees with the Chamber of Shipping and the RYA, and I think predominantly down to staffing pressures within the RYA, the process back and forth with consultation has been quite slow at times. But again, very happy to bring this one forward. I'm not going to go through the whole report now, just so we can get on to any questions. But the recommendation here, of course, is that now that we've finished the consultation and we've worked through the items with the consultees, the recommendation today that we're looking to, for the portfolio holder for Highways Travel Environment, to approve the Weymouth Harbour General Directions to be officially brought into force. In brief, the reason for the recommendation today is that some harbour authorities have powers through their local enabling legislation to give general directions to enable them, after due consultation, to lay down general rules for navigation, subject to certain constraints, and to regulate the berthing and movements of ships. These carry the force of law, but are often easier to achieve and amend than using bylaws, and thus they act as a useful mechanism for managing navigation and furthering safety. General directions, procedural provisions involve publication of proposed directions in accordance with Section 22 of the Weymouth Harbour Revision Order, but they are not required to be confirmed by the Secretary of State, as is the case with bylaws. To assist in the management of Weymouth Harbour in compliance with the Port Marine Safety Code, the Council, the Dorset Council as the statutory harbour authority, has obtained an extended modernised power to issue general directions under the Weymouth Harbour Revision Order 2021, and the general directions have been drafted, the final copy of which are presented here today. These general directions have been given for the purpose of promoting or securing conditions conducive to the ease, convenience or safety of navigation, the safety of persons and protection of property, flora and fauna in Weymouth Harbour as prescribed in Article 21 of the 2021 Order. The introduction of the new general directions for Weymouth Harbour contributes to the delivery of the Dorset Council's Harbour Strategic Goals 1, which is to maintain safe working harbours and provide high-quality infrastructure and facilities, and 6, which is to protect Dorset's natural capital by operating best practice in environmental management of the harbours. As I say, there is a recommendation before the committee today, and I'd like to, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Ed. It's a fairly massive piece of work, the general directions, and I know there's been some amendments with an input from the statutory consultees and the other consultees, and I think we finally arrived at the point where we can now make this recommendation. Would any members of the committee like to clarify or comment before Mary?
Chairman, I'd just like to say thank you very much for a very full and comprehensive report. There's a huge amount of information for us all in this. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank the teams behind this. And of course, it's been, as Ed said, it's been ongoing really since the Harbour Revision Order went in, which was before this committee even was formed. I think we've been working, so we can see the length of time it's taken to get to this point. If there's no other points, the recommendation is that the Harbours Advisory Committee recommends the portfolio holder for highways, travel and the environment approves the Weymouth Harbour general directions to be brought into force. Our members, can I have a proposer for this, please? Yes, Mary Penfold, and a seconder, Sarah Williams, thank you. And can we all ask all in favour to show by raising a hand? I think that's unanimous, so thank you very much. And that will now be forwarded to the portfolio holder, who, of course, we're delighted to have here today and has noted our recommendation. Item 12 now. Weymouth Harbour, the future development and open port duty. And again, it's over to Ed for this report.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Again, I'm just going to go through the brief summary of this one. Again, a very complex, quite a complex report. I would be remiss, really, if I wasn't to thank specifically my colleagues Lara Altry and Ken Buchan, who have been formative in bringing this report forward. It is a hugely complex topic, or a hugely complex thing that we're embarking on here. And I think it's absolutely right that we've had initial discussions with members to try and to get as much information across. But of course, the report is before you today. But like I say, my extreme thanks to Lara and Ken both for their significant help with this one. So the summary of this report, which is Weymouth Harbour, the future development and open port duty. So at its meeting on the 30th of January 2024, Cabinet agreed to invite the Harbours Advisory Committee to consider and make recommendations about how the Levelling Up Fund commitments for the Peninsula site can be delivered in a manner compatible with the Council's duties as statutory harbour authority, while securing the success and future viability of the harbour, including consideration of the potential approach to a new harbour revision order. Currently, works are progressing on the Harbour Quayside section of the peninsula, where coastal community funds supported improvements are being made to support commercial fishing operations, services for harbour users and the public realm in this location. The current harbour premises, excluding the Wayfish premises, which have been sold, are shown on the plan that was deposited with the Weymouth Harbour Revision Order in 2021. As the Harbours Advisory Committee is aware, the harbour is subject to the open port duty, which is the duty to be open for the shipping and unshipping of goods and the embarkation and disembarkation of passengers. At the moment, this duty is unrestricted, which means that the Council in principle needs to retain the ability to accept commercial shipping, such as a ferry service at the harbour. This entails retaining and maintaining the associated infrastructure and sufficient open space to enable this duty to be met. The duty can be restricted under a harbour revision order to only apply to a certain size of vessel, for example under 24 metres, and this would mean the Council is still under a statutory obligation to meet the open port duty in relation to all relevant current users of the harbour, but it would not need to incur expenses in relation to larger commercial shipping. The former ferry service ceased in 2015, and no viable replacement services have come forward since that date. For the future development ambitions, which have been outlined in the recently approved Harbour Business Plan, for these to be met and for the wider peninsula to be developed, the open port duty does need to be amended by way of a harbour revision order. And the report is in front of the committee today for approval for us to engage with the consultative group, to consult with them on these proposals and to get their comments on for us applying for another harbour revision order to restrict the open port duty. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ed. That's a very concise summary of a massive piece of work that we have. Well, there's whole teams involved in this because it's assets and property, and we're looking really here at the beginning of the regeneration of Weymouth, and the government have recognised the value of this in the award of the 19.5 million Luff funding, which we've referred to. And it's not just the harbour works, there are one or two other areas within Weymouth as part of that funding. And it's a really quite exciting time, but this is an integral part of that we now go to consult with the Weymouth Harbour users. And it's now obviously going to be in the public domain, and we want, as usual, and has been our practice, to consult with the consultative groups before we go out to general consultation, because we obviously value the harbour users' views ahead of the general consultation. So any comments from members? And I did thank the members who had the informal workshop where we looked at this in detail, and thank you for your input. It was really valuable. If there's no further comments, the recommendation is that the Harbours Advisory Committee recommends that the portfolio holder for Highways, Travel and Environment gives the authority for the Weymouth Harbour Consultative Group to be consulted on the proposal to apply for a harbour revision order to restrict the open port duty. May I have a proposer for this, please? Mary, thank you. And a seconder? Oh, Lee Harley. Thank you. Our members, can I first ask for all members who are in favour of the recommendation to show by raising a hand, please? Again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So we will now ask Councillor Ray Bryan to give his authority for the Weymouth Harbour Consultative Group to be consulted. Item 12 is next, and it's the forward plan, and we welcome Ken Buchan, who it'd be nice to hear a contribution from you, Ken.
Thank you, Chair. Unexpected, but thank you. Okay, so in addition to the normal standing items that we have, there are two additional items. And I also note the other items that have come up today, which we will bring forward around about the Weymouth Quay Regeneration Project and a sort of debrief on how that project has progressed and the outcome of it. The two additional items that we have for the 12th of June meeting is consideration of the new harbour revision order. So Ed will be reporting back on a consultation that's been done with the consultative group, and we'll report back to the committee on the outcome of that. And then also the business plan update We've outlined a number of actions within the Harbours business plan, and we thought it would be a good opportunity to give an update on how some of those actions are progressing, and that will become, I would think, more of a sort of standing item in the future as we go through delivering the business plans over the next 5 years. But I think that's it from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken. Are there any points or any other items that we should be perhaps considering to add to the forward plan? And thank you, Ken, for noting the suggestions from Richard to add to the plan. If not, then the committee, we've noted the forward plan. Item 13, urgent items. There are no items of urgent business. And item 14, exempt business, and there is no exempt business. So that concludes the Harbours Advisory Committee today. I want to thank all the members. It may well have a slightly different look to it at the next meeting in June, because there isn't a little event before that, but I'm delighted that the experience of our independent members will continue to help guide the committee in the future, however it is comprised. And I'll just leave it at that. But thank you all for attending today. Thank you to all the officers, and I think we finished in good time. Thank you all.